Last week, a Magic Mirror episode came out titled The Case for Tutors. If y'all haven't listened to Magic Mirror, I recommend checking it out. Trinket Mage, Salubrious Snail, and 3 Elk all talking about some facet of magic, and it's always pretty interesting. In any case, they talked about their preferences when it came to tutors, and it seemed to boil down to a couple things. If a tutor is there to grab the same card every time and you feel bad playing that card, it's time to take it out of your deck. Not the tutor, the unfun card. It's not really the tutor's fault, and it can generally stay. The second thing that I think I heard 3 Elk mention first was if a tutor is too broad in scope, it becomes less appealing. In other words, a demonic tutor is not as fun as something like a Chord of Calling, or Artificer's Intuition in Trinket Mage's case, since the latter encourages thoughtful deck building. If you're running an Artificer's Intuition, a Bright Glass Gear Hulk, or a Micromancer, you have to think more carefully about what you want to put in your 1-drop slots, and try to find cards in that category that could answer potential threats or serve to further your game plan. This sparked a conversation about toolbox decks and ultimately inspired me to make this video. A toolbox deck is a deck with a bunch of niche tutors that are ultimately meant to find the perfect answer for every situation. It's not uncommon for a toolbox deck to tutor for a tutor for an answer, because although each tutor finds only certain cards, a well-brewed, well-considered toolbox deck spins a complicated web of synergies. These decks can actually teach you really helpful lessons since, although you find answers reactively while playing, it actually requires the most preemptive consideration a deck could, just during the deck building stage. When I got done listening to that episode, I figured I would try my hand at making a toolbox deck, and boy was it a doozy. If you enjoy deck building, this is the most fun I have had brewing in a while, and I highly recommend giving it a shot. And if you enjoy watching an internet goof talk about his deck building, then by all means. I'd love to walk you through my journey of building my first toolbox deck in years. I wanted to start from the ground up, so first thing I looked at was every tutor to decide what I wanted my deck to be centered around. I filtered out anything that searched for lands, because although land toolbox decks are totally cool, landfall decks are probably the closest thing that I've built to something like this, and I wanted to explore something new. Plus, 3 Elk's toolbox deck is a land deck, so it wouldn't really feel too original. At first, I wanted to see what I could do with wild research. Trinket Mage mentioned that he built a lot of wild research decks in the past, and I thought if I built one too, it would still likely end up unique enough to call my own. But when I started scrolling through the tutors, it didn't take long for me to find my deck's true calling. Begin the Invasion is a sorcery that costs Wooburg and X to search for X battles and put them directly into play. Battles are a fairly new card type that came out in March of the Machine. When you play a battle, you choose an opponent to protect it. It's basically like enchanting them with a planeswalker to defend, but it's neither an enchantment nor a planeswalker. You can attack a battle to remove counters from them, and when the last counter is removed, you exile it and cast the other side. Although I didn't really know much about battles when I read this, I knew every battle has an ETB, and some are pretty strong. The only battle I run in any deck is one that board wipes when it enters, and although I only run it because I wanted to try it out of my jank, it's done pretty well for me, and I thought if I run a card that can tutor for multiple of these ETBs, it would make a perfect toolbox foundation. So that became the objective. Build a deck with the goal of finding Begin the Invasion, cast it for as much as I can, and fetch a ton of value to hopefully find some combination of battles that can win me the game. There are currently 36 battles, and of those 36, I found half would be good enough to tutor for in a pinch. These 18 are comprised of 5 card draw, 3 spot removal, 2 board wipes, 2 tutors, 2 recursion, and 1 each of ramp, token generation, damage, and this crazy battle that basically cascades when it enters. The rest I left out because they seemed to be more focused on a certain strategy, or they were just generic value that didn't really serve as part of the toolbox, like Invasion of Tarkir, which deals damage based on the number of dragons you reveal from your hand, and flips to make dragons shock something when they swing. Not really usable for our purposes unless we really want to throw in a bunch of random dragons just for this card. Real quick, if you like this video, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks. There are some pieces that are worth taking note of when it comes to actually winning when we play our secret commander. The first one is Invasion of Arcavios. When Arcavios enters, you search your library, graveyard, or sideboard for any instant or sorcery and put it into your hand. If nothing else, this can just give us back our Begin the Invasion from the grave, but as you'll see, there's a lot we can do with this. The second important piece is Invasion of Tolvada, which reanimates any non-battle permanent from our grave when it ETBs. Both of these have such a wide reach when it comes to what they can target that it makes it easy to brainstorm all sorts of wacky ways you can use these two in combination to achieve almost any combo. I'll get back to these in a sec, but I want to go over some of the others and talk about how they can play off each other. One of the most useful battles is Invasion of Regatha. When Invasion of Regatha enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to another target battle or opponent, and 1 damage to up to 1 target creature. The creature damage doesn't really matter, but 4 damage is actually enough to instantly kill 12 of our battles on entry. This gives us access to even more effects in our toolbox. Here are some of my favorites. Flipping Invasion of Amonkhet gives us a 4/4 clone of any creature card in any graveyard, great for pesky graveyard decks. Invasion of Fiora flips into Marquesa, Resolute Monarch, which removes all counters from a permanent when she attacks, allowing us to set up a flip for some of our bigger stuff. Invasion of Chandelar flips into Leyline Surge, an enchantment that lets us play a free permanent on our upkeep, and Invasion of Vryn flips into an overloaded Mage Ring, which you can sacrifice to copy any spell you control for just 1 mana. Invasions of Mercadia, Vryn, and Urgamon each make us discard cards when we draw, which can feed our invasions of Zendikar and Tolvada. Just remember, the way that targeting works, you actually have to have these on the battlefield before Zendikar and Tolvada, because if they enter at the same time, they won't actually see the discarded cards when their trigger enters the stack, no matter how you choose to order it. Still, that's not too much of a problem since Arcavios and our commander can grab Invasion out of the grave like I mentioned before. Okay, we've got our base, so now that I brought him up, let's talk about the commander real quick. There isn't a 5-color commander that can help us fetch Begin the Invasion from our 99, so that's off the table. And there aren't any that synergize with battles either. At first, I experimented with Niv-Mizzet Reborn, since I figured he could grab some pieces when he entered the battlefield, and I could throw in some charms for extra toolbox nonsense. But ultimately, it made the deck too busy and unfocused. At the end of the day, I want that juicy dopamine hit of casting Begin the Invasion for big mana and going crazy with everything I grab. And Niv-Mizzet just takes up too much space when he doesn't even support that game plan. That left only one real option, and one that actually felt a lot better in playtesting: Garth One-Eye. Garth is literally a walking toolbox, and his spell list is actually really useful for our plan. Black Lotus gives us 3 more invasion mana for free, and then on our next turn we can use Regrowth to grab invasion out of the grave and use it all over again. This deck is going to have a few Flicker synergies to reuse our battles, and Flickering Garth also resets the spells you can cast from him. So if Garth can't find us Begin the Invasion, what can? Personal Tutor, Solve the Equation, Brain Spoil, and Arcavios each search directly for Begin the Invasion. But we can't stop there. This is a toolbox deck after all. Micromancer can fetch Personal Tutor, Perplex finds Solve the Equation, and to go one step further, Clutch of the Undercity and Dimir Houseguard can find Micromancer. There's a few more tutors that involve setting up the win con, so let's talk about that first. There's currently a standard legal combo involving Invasion of Arcavios that served as the inspiration for the finisher. This is actually an infinite combo requiring 4 cards, and it tilts the deck in more of a combo toolbox hybrid direction. If you feel that breaks the spirit of the deck, or you're not a fan of infinite combos, I have an alternative win con for you, so if you'd rather see that, skip ahead to this timestamp. The infinite combo involves Arcavios, Omniscience, This Town Ain't Big Enough, and any other non-land permanent with an ETB that can kill if repeated endlessly. Luckily for us, Invasion of Urgatha fits this build perfectly since it can also shoot opponents directly for 4 damage. Once you have these pieces, the combo is super simple. With Omniscience in play, cast Tatabe targeting your 2 battles. Then cast both of them to shoot an opponent and return Tatabe from your graveyard to your hand. Getting Omniscience on board is actually not as hard as you might think, since we have Tolvada to return it from our grave to play, and we can grab Tolvada, Arcavios, and Regatha all at once. This gives us a side quest to complete before casting Begin the Invasion: get Omniscience into our grave. This is where the other tutors come in. Unmarked Grave and Entomb tutor directly for Omniscience and throw them into your graveyard. The previously mentioned Micromancer, Solve the Equation, and Personal Tutor can find these alongside Muddle the Mixture. If Omniscience is in our hand, we can use the Regatha Chandelar combo to play it for free on our upkeep, or any of our draw battles to discard it to grave. If you aren't interested in winning with an infinite combo, all these cards can actually stay in your deck, and you can just remove Tatabe or Omniscience as you please. Instead, you would search for big battlecruiser creatures that can take over games, and you can recycle Tovada with your flicker effects to get them into play, or play them for free with your Leyline Surge to ramp ahead of your opponents. There's so many more little synergies I didn't have time to go over, so if you're interested in taking a look at the full list, I'll leave a link in the description, along with a budget list under $50 and one without the infinite combo. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can head to patreon.com/cardboardjunkies or become a member right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, y'all. I'll see you next time.